For sure. We can continue. The one thing for favorite stop. You know, there's a little more straight. Yeah.
All right. Oh, this young lady looks like she's going to have scenic properties.
Yes.
Right next to grandpa and family. So many people. Yeah, that's right. It's straight.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the July 19, 2024 meeting of the Beavercreek Rotary. First, I'd like to thank our greeters, David Brandenburg and David Brandenburg. Rick Japp was scheduled, but he did say he couldn't be here. He had something going on in his home. Thank Eric Marcus, Ticketmaster, Beth Handworker for helping set up all the programs and everything. Pete Bales, Mark Weinstein, and Mike Swick for the great programs, and Jim Kendall for the website. Danny, are you ready? Would you like to join us forward for the invitations?
Well, good afternoon. Would you please join me in prayer? Oh, Holy Creator, we are humbled but by the world's greatest person who lived as a symbol of goodness and thought from a different culture and raised in a different faith than most of us. Taught us that all humans have the same need for peace and goodwill among men. Help our leaders and those of the nations that follow the examples in their quest for the united world, that we can find comfort for the poor, opportunity for all, and peace. Amen.
Thank you. Secretary report, Joe Jenkins.
So we're at P4% today. We have a couple of guests. Jack Henderson has a guest. Hi. Yeah, Courtney with them and his granddaughter. Brian Russian has a guest.
Yes, I'm happy to introduce Andy Earhart. He is our new Community Development Director for Beavercreek Township. To anything in regards to zoning, planning, or development within the unincorporated area of Beavercreek Township, Andy is your guest.
All right.
Thank you.
Then I have my wife Amanda and then they're here today.
Welcome. Welcome. Before I invite Chris up, I'd like Beth Handler to come. Jack.
I'm in trouble. I'm in the principal's office.
Well, it's in front of everybody, so
This is
right.
right for me.
It's in private. As most of you know, that one of the ways that we can earn awards in Rotary is donating to the foundation. And if you donate $1,000 to the foundation, you get a Paul Harris Award. Beth just recently got hers, so I wanted to present her with this. I wanted Jack here to be a part of this.
Well, as you know, Paul Harris Award recognizes $1,000 contributed to the Paul Harris Foundation, and that supports things around the world as well as in this club. The Paul Harris Foundation helps support our Christmas baskets and our dictionary projects in schools. So congratulations, Beth. This is her first Paul Harris Award, and she will get her medallion when
A little later. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I dress for the occasion. Okay.
Thank you for that. I just got that this week, so I want to make sure it was entered right away, so have that. Next up, Chris Hadley, Sergeant at Arms. Oh, don't be carried away.
There you go.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians, VIP guests, and Assistant Governor. Today is July 19th, aka the 201st day of the year, which makes us about 55% through the year, and just leaves about 6 days until Christmas in July, and we'll celebrate that. As far as birthdays, it looks like back in October, this time of the year, not a lot goes on, but Joe Jenkins will be celebrating birthday tomorrow. No partner birthdays, member anniversaries. Sandy Brubaker will be celebrating 9 years on the 24th. And wedding anniversaries, Mr. and Mrs. Paul Otten will be celebrating 29 years on the 22nd. For fun things to do this weekend, if you're looking for something to do tonight, down at Spaghetti Warehouse tonight at 7 p.m. They are doing a crime scene crack up. So if you're into murder mysteries, crime, and all that, and enjoy spaghetti, feel free to check them out. Moving on to some fun history on this day. On this day, maybe back in 1799, since the actual date isn't confirmed, the Rosetta Stone was found by French soldiers in the city of Rosetta. And just so there's no confusion, this is not the app that teaches you how to speak languages. It's the actual stone they found back then. Also on this day, in 1848, the women's movement was born during the Pioneering Women's Rights Convention at Seneca Falls, New York. Elizabeth Cady Stanton organized a 2-day meeting during which they used the language of Declaration of Independence to state their claim to the rights they felt women were entitled to as American citizens. Stanton also introduced to the 300 men and women in attendance a radical idea for inclusion in the group's declaration, the demand for women's rights to vote. At that time, no women were allowed to vote anywhere on the planet, and many women, in fact, objected to the idea, thinking it was impossible. Obviously, we discovered it's not impossible, as a lot of things have stemmed from that. One of the other things that stemmed from that convention were bloomers, which is glad that those are no longer in style. Moving on to 1877, there looks like it was the first recorded men's single championship in tennis at the All England Lawn Tennis Club in Wimbledon. I don't know if you heard about Wimbledon, kind of a big deal. So it actually would eventually become the world's most celebrated tennis championship, known as one of the 4 Grand Slams. For the inaugural competition, a 27-year-old by the name of Spencer Gore was the first champion in England, beating William Marshall. And back then, up until 1922, if you won the Wimbledon, you were automatically in next year's finals, and then whoever made it to the finals played you. So not a bad way to get some back-to-back-to-back championships without having to do a lot of work. 1903, French bicyclist Maurice Guerin won the first Tour de France, which covered 2,428 kilometers. Well, that's 1,508 American miles, which is 1,507 miles more than I would ever ride a bike for. In 1941, Tom and Jerry first appeared in an animated cartoon by Hanna-Barbera called The Midnight Snack. And fun fact that they had a contest to name the 2 characters, which was won by another animator named John Carr. So thanks to him, we have Tom and Jerry. In 1954, the first Elvis Presley single, That's All Right, was released by Sun Records. Only 7,000 copies of this record was released to make it a local hit down in Memphis, Tennessee. The performance was later hailed by the Rolling Stone magazine as the first rock and roll record. I attempted to recreate the dance. However, my hips just aren't as they used to be back in the day. So fortunately, due to injury, I cannot dance for you guys today. In 1980, the Summer Olympics opened in Moscow. This Olympics had about 60 countries that refused to attend because of the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. And this is the largest boycott in the history of the Olympic Games. If we are looking to celebrate some things today, today is National Play Day, National Daiquiri Day, National Words with Friends Day, and International Retainer Day. And then coming up, some things to celebrate. Tomorrow we have National Moon Day, Lollipop Day, Fortune Cookie Day, Toss Away the Could Haves and Should Haves Day. So if you have any of those little black books from way back in the day, probably a good day to get rid of those once and for all. Sunday we have National Be Somebody Day, Junk Food Day, and Ice Cream Day. Monday, we got National Mango Day and Hammock Day. On the 23rd, National Vanilla Ice Cream Day, and then I'm sure we'll have a few people celebrating this or for themselves or for someone they know, National Gorgeous Grandma Day. Followed by the next day, National Tequila Day. We also have National Cousins Day and Drive-Through Day, and then wrapping up on the 25th, National Chili Dog Day, Hot Fudge Sunday, National Refreshments Day, Hire a Veteran Day, and National Intern Day. With interns, just a little side note, I do know the Beavercreek Chamber has a whole program helping companies get access to interns, especially during the summertime. So if you are in need of an intern, definitely reach out to the Beavercreek Chamber. I believe you can, in essence, get them for free in a good way. They still get paid, but the chamber picks it up or else you contribute. So it's a good way to get extra help for a little bit price and to teach those up and coming adults some skills that better them for adulthood. So to help get us ready for Mr. Graham's phenomenal speech that he's going to give us and all kinds of facts and data and numbers that we're all going to be able to edit the seats for, I feel like I would take this time to get a little property tax pre-gaming with you all. Also, for him being here is perfect timing. As we know, we are in the beginning of our new Rotary year, which makes it a great time for him to reassess the hilarity of our jokes being told here. And I'm confident that he will give us a very fair assessment. In fact, I heard David's so good at his job, he can calculate your property value just by looking at you. So for the sake of your bank accounts, do not make eye contact with him. But before I do get started, I do want to thank David Graham and his team for all the hard work that they have done. My house is no longer haunted because the last property tax bill I got scared all the ghosts away. Actually, just kidding. My wife and I don't have a home yet. We're actually looking for our first and forever home. It's taken a little bit longer than we kind of hoping for because we were told that when we want to get a mortgage, we want to find a mortgage that we can pay off quicker than our property tax bills. So, according to the internet, here are some fun facts about those taxes. Property taxes are primary funding source for local services like schools, libraries, and emergency services. So obviously very important with some of the Rotarians we have in here. Because Ohio is awesome, we rank 11th in the nation for highest average property tax rates. Marin County's property tax rates are generally higher than the national average as well. Ohio's property tax are administered at the county level with rates set by various taxing districts. Property tax rates are often expressed in mills, or if you don't know what that is, 1 mil equals $1 of tax per 1,000 of the assessed value. Several factors influence property values, including location, size, age, condition, and recent sales of comparable properties. Ohio also offers various property tax exemptions and reductions, including the homestead exemption for homeowners age 65 or older or totally and permanently disabled. Veterans also with disabilities may qualify for further reductions. Property tax reduction may also be available for agricultural land and certain historical properties. It is also essential for property owners to explore potential exemptions and reductions to ensure they are not overpaying. And the Greene County Auditor's Office can provide information on available exemptions and reductions as well. Also, while going through the internet, apparently there was a rumor that the Wright brothers when they've been in the airplane, they did that solely to escape Green County's property taxes. I don't know if they succeeded, but it's great cause to think something that we all do. And on my final note, I will leave you all with a joke. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? And he was the only one that did not complain about his property tax bill. Today's fines, if you've ever complained or internally said a barrage of curse words after opening your tax bill, that's $1. If you've ever played Words with Friends, that's $1. For not wearing your badge, that's $1. If you're late, obviously that's. If you do not have a happy buck for today, that's $1. Don?
We saw him, I must have really well, it's challenges. I'm a little remiss, I should have introduced our assistant district governor over here, Roger Sloan. Welcome, we're glad. Roger. In that same vein, Dottie Mead, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, has been challenged to raise an extra $160,000 for the district. Our district number is 6670, and she chose to maybe use the district number that each member could donate that much, but since they don't want to use change, she came up with $67. So if each member could donate this year, well, just this year, an extra $67 towards the foundation, that would be a great thing. She would be able to meet her goal. So, okay. Happy bucks.
I'm happy that I got the chance to go with family up to Columbus and celebrate my older son's 25th birthday. And that didn't make me feel old enough. Kyle outside said he asked me if he's making any trips. He goes, "Yeah, we're going to celebrate my mom's 50th birthday."
Try.
It's my happy buck. It's for myself and my wife. We were vacationing in Yellowstone Park on July 4th when they had an active shooter there in the dining facility. We got out okay. Our 15-person group got out okay. The gunman was killed on the site, but again, I'm glad that we got back and say that.
Yeah.
We're glad you could. Eric?
And some of you may have noticed in your email box, I was in charge of getting people to go to the district Dragons Night on August 10th at the Dragons. I'm happy that we sold 174 tickets, which means that 7 times $174, $7 times 174 tickets will go to End Polio Now campaign at the Rotary Foundation.
Jack?
I'm happy today. I didn't get a chance earlier, but I'd like to recognize that I've got my granddaughter Courtney and my great granddaughter Sophie.
Welcome. No.
I'm happy to return as your district governor. I didn't know whether I'd be coming back this year or not. And when Dottie called me, I said, yes, I'd be the assistant governor again. And I won by St. 4 clubs in Beavercreek as the #1 goal. Thank you.
That's all we're glad you're here. Jared?
Yeah, I'm really happy. Wednesday, I had my first cataract surgery. And Dr. Knowles over at Stalls did an excellent job. It went flawlessly. And I came home, I took the patch off, and all of a sudden that is my strong eye. And made what used to be my strong eye groping around now. Anyhow, did a super job, good staff, good doctors, recommend them.
Very good. Now you have an eye like an eagle, right?
You got it.
And we just were over there earlier this week to celebrate their 30th anniversary here in Beavercreek. So we had really thank for that. So obviously they've done a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. Any more happy bucks? There is a sign-up sheet going around somewhere to fill in for readers. So if you could get that filled out, so for me, appreciate that. Take a drawing. Please proceed to this, go to the Christmas basket program. It's a 50-50, and we have a new rule. Anybody but Joe Jenkins can win.
Exactly.
They like right. Fire. That's about I know that's not bad. How much? Did you have?
Ticket number 168. Anybody have that? 864. 168, 864.
No, on. Where you go? Where is it? Check that. Sailor. I've got it. I don't have mine. I mean, Eric, I look. I'm trying to stutter here.
What was the number? 168, 864.
866.
I got it.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
Talk about Joe Jenkins here.
I know.
I got this, and then like when from table with, some blocks,
Don't lay it face up.
yeah, and then, exactly. Yeah. Smarter. You got it, and then. Pick the children. Oh. Oh, all right.
Oh, Buck Rose.
You're happy.
Very good. We'll do that next week. Any announcements? All right, we have a good speaker today. It's one that's very appropriate to certainly my life recently. But I'm gonna ask Pete Bales to come forward. He's already here and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Don. I know Chris Hadley warmed up the room with some auditor jokes. Appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, today I have the pleasure of introducing a man who spent more time with numbers than a math teacher on caffeine. David Graham has been with the Greene County Auditor's Office for 2 decades, selected auditor in 2011. And apparently we just love him so much, we keep electing him. Before becoming auditor, David honed his skills at the Ohio Auditor Estates Office. He hails from Xenia, where he and his wife Lisa are raising 4 kids and doting on 5 grandchildren. He graduated from Wright State with a degree in accounting and finance, which means he's been a money whiz before it was even cool. So it sounds cool now? Without further ado, please welcome David Graham.
All right, so we have a lot of stuff to discuss, sorry. We have a lot of stuff to discuss, but feel free to interrupt me during this if you have questions. I'm telling you what I think you need to know. You know what you want to know. So by all means, interrupt me if you have a question. We all know property taxes are the least favorite of all taxes because you can't control your value. The market dictates your value, which in essence dictates your tax bill. It's not like income tax, sales tax, where it's based on how much you earn, your ability to pay. It's not even based on, the services you receive. I was talking to somebody at a meeting, won't name the meeting, but said, why should I have to pay for the library levy when I don't even use the library? So maybe if you used it more, you wouldn't ask questions. So, and then the other part, of course, is that they're complicated. So what we're going to discuss and see if I'm not going to go into a detailed explanation of how property taxes are done. That's something I've done a number of times, probably done for this group. But what we are going to talk about is kind of the types of levies, what this valuation did, this valuation increase, why we had the valuation increase, and the impact that it had on your property taxes. The most important part, and I was hoping Representative Lampton would be here, is solutions to our property tax problem. Because we don't have a valuation problem. We have a property tax problem. So first of all, valuations. Wow. If I get that letter in September, late August, man. I even complained about mine. I'm like, oh my God, how can my value have gone up that much? Last week, lady across the house, exact same house I have, sold it for $260. And I'm like, uh-oh. My value's going up more in 3 years. This market is not stopping. There's still a shortage of housing supply, and as long as that's the case. So in 2022, now all of my statistics, unless I say otherwise, are for Beavercreek City, taxing district B42. There were 853 valid sales in 2022 alone. That's roughly 5% of the total residential properties. So obviously, the number of sales is statistically significant. We can't ignore and say, well, you know, it's just an anomaly. That's not really the market. On average, my value was 68% of those sales prices. Now, my goal is to shoot for about 95%. IAAO standards that we follow in mass appraisal requires me to be somewhere between 90 and 100. 95 is a good medium place. So that was why Beavercreek residents saw on average a 27% increase in their property values. Not really going to talk a whole lot more about value. If you have questions, look at what properties in your neighborhood are selling for, talk to your local realtor. You know, it is the market. You know, I joke, I said, my son just paid $150,000 for a $90,000 home. It wasn't because I raised him to be stupid. It's because that's what the market is. So, in terms of types of levies, and sorry, not being able to see is I'm gonna share that a little bit. Or I could just come out here and talk, you know, privately.
Sure, there you go.
So I'm going the wrong way though.
Yeah, let it go.
Okay, so anybody who's heard my detailed property tax discussion knows that there's more than 2 types of levies, but for simplicity's sake, we're going to pretend there are 2 types of levies. Inside millage, this is established in law. Maximum of 10 mills available to any taxing district that's shared among the taxing districts in that. So 10 mills is easy. There is no adjustment. There is no reduction factor. If your value goes up 10%, your taxes go up 10%. If your value goes down 10%, your taxes go down 10%. It's really simple. You wouldn't need my level of experience if all property taxes work that way. Most of the levies that you pay, though, are voted levies. So with a voted levy, you have to look at why did that valuation change? A reappraisal change, which is changing the value of what existed previously based on current market conditions. When you have a reappraisal change, as in this case, values go up 30%, the tax rate is reduced so that that levy generates the same amount of money as it did in the previous year. We're going to talk about a big exception to that rule, but let's just focus on that rule for right now. When new construction occurs, then additional money is realized by the subdivisions. Now, the thing behind this is pretty simple. If I reappraise your property at 30% more, it doesn't mean it costs the fire department 30% more to provide services to you. But if values go up 3% because a new subdivision goes in, that's going to put greater demand on our services that we provide, and therefore they get additional money for that new construction. Is everybody good with those? Okay, so why does the auditor update property values every 3 years? It's part of the equalization process. Equalization says, hey, look, if you have a property that is in a declining market, then you have less of that tax burden. And the best example I can come up with, how many people here think that Beavercreek and Bowersville property values move at equal rates? Yeah, they don't. Everybody's value changes by different rates. Now, we're not even talking about a taxing district. Of course, I'm using B42, but within B42, there are a number of neighborhoods that vary greatly from $1 million houses to $170,000 houses. You say, I don't think there are any of those left anymore. So equalization does is it distributes the taxes based on that value. So real quick, we'll look at equalization at work. It kind of shows a little bit of that slide before. Also, we have 2 property owners. They own the only properties in Greene County. Both of them appraised at $100,000. You can see millage that, or total money that they're generating is $5,040. I come along and I do a reappraisal. Property owner A sees his value increase 30%. Property owner B sees their property value increase 25%. So, as we said earlier, inside millage is easy. Guess what? Owner A saw a 30% increase on his inside millage. Owner B saw 25%. But look at what happened on your voted levy. On your voted levy, the tax rate was actually reduced from, well, found it earlier. Oh, well, from 62 mils down to 49 mils, at 48.63. So that that levy would generate the exact same amount of money as it did in the previous year. But what happened to owner A? They saw a 2% increase in their tax bill because they now own more than 50%. They now own 51% of the total value for this. So owner B actually saw a tax decrease, even though their value increased. Am I good with that? So now let's talk about the exception. The 20 mil floor. Okay, and I'm actually going to go back to my notes real quick on the floor. So the floor was created as part of the school fund. So House Bill 920, which is what created the reduction factors that the limited levies get reduced, came in 1976. The floor came in 1979 because school districts were constantly having to go back to the ballot. They were not able to keep up with the cost of education. So they say. I was pretty young at the time. I couldn't speak specifically to it. But so what they did was they said, look, if you have current expense levies, they cannot go below 20 mils. Now, for a career center or a joint vocational school district, that floor is 2 mils. So think about what just happened is we're talking about, okay, this tax rate is going to keep coming down until it gets to the floor. It can't go any further down. So that means when these values increase and that rate can't go any lower, all of a sudden, when you have reappraisal increases, that floor millage acts like inside millage. Okay. So, and it used to be a really key part of the school funding formula. It's kind of changed a little bit now, but I'm not a funding expert, so I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that. But let's see why this is important. Inside millage in Beavercreek City represents 14% of the total millage that is paid. So if you had a 30% increase in your value and only 14% of your levies were directly tied to valuation change, you would see about a 4% increase in your tax bill. If you come and complain to me about getting a 4% increase in your tax bill over a 3-year period, I'm probably going to say, hey, it's just the cost of doing business. Don't know that I'm going to have a lot of sympathy for you. If, however, you consider that this floor millage now makes 38% of your levies act like inside millage, now that 30% increase is going to cause an 11% increase in your tax bill. That's significant. That's a little harder to just kind of brush you off with. So let's go through an example of the floor real quick. We got inside millage and voted millage. You can see the total effective tax rate is 20, assuming a value of $100,000, generates $2,000 in revenue. Year 2, I come along and I reappraise every property in the county. Inside millage goes up 30%, as it should, because inside millage is easy. But the voted millage can't go any lower. So it also increases 30%. That's the part that, you know, it's not just that you get that 30% on those current expense levies subject to the floor, but go to year 3, the market bust. I reduce property values, that same $30,000 that I just increased them. Inside millage loses that additional revenue, as it should. But look what happens on the voted millage. The tax rate is increased from 15.4 mils to 20 mils, so that it generates the same amount of revenue as it did in the previous year. So this is an ongoing. This is going to be a continuing issue. Questions? So this isn't a new problem. Why are we just now discussing it? Historically, I've been in the auditor's office now for since 2000, so 24 years. Historically, values have increased 5 to 15%, would be a normal market increase in a triennial update or a 3-year appraisal period. In this case, in 2 of those years, we actually saw decreases. In 2011 and 2014, we saw values decrease. And guess what? Everybody says, yeah, you decreased my value, but you didn't decrease my taxes. Yeah, that's not the way they work. We just proved that, right? The other thing is the number of schools at the 20 mil floor. So this has been a long-term problem. It's been exacerbated by these large increases. So you can see in 2000, we had 226 schools. Remember, there's roughly 600 school districts in Ohio. 2010, that number of schools at the floor decreased to 133 because of the recession. Values decreased, rates went up, a lot fewer schools at the floor. Look at where we are in 2023, 390. Over half of our school districts are at the floor, and a lot more are working their way towards the floor. I thought it was funny, Carl Keith would go on the news. You know, Carl loves the news, and I'm not knocking Carl. Carl's a great guy. But he had one school district that was at the floor. So he was going out saying, don't worry about that 25-30% increase. Your taxes are only going to go up about 4%. I have the exact opposite problem. I only have one school district that isn't at the floor. And I'm just going out and every group that would listen to me talk and say, pay no attention to that man behind that curtain. He's, because our story is different. So, and the other part to remember is that 60 to 65% of your property tax dollars go to school. So what has caused the problem? Obviously the floor. But let's not blame schools, okay? This isn't one of those Davids out there bad-mouthing the schools. No, because they have a school funding issue that is a large result of the DeRolf decision, which, contrary to popular belief, did not say funding schools using property taxes is unconstitutional. That is not what it says.
Right.
It says using that as your primary basis of not only did it drive what the local share was, but it drove what the state share was, which meant if you went to Ironton City School District in Lawrence County, where they have no value and no income to speak of, very poor area, and compare it to Beavercreek, it didn't matter to the state. Each of those children have an equal right to an education. So what has to happen is more of that state money is going to Ironton City School District and less is going to Beavercreek City School District. Last time I looked, and I tried to look up some numbers today, but of course the Department of Education's website was down. So not their fault, but so the last time I looked, Beavercreek City School District, the state has an average. Here's what it costs to educate a kid per year. And Beavercreek City School District was getting about 10% of that number. Cedar Cliff Local School District, which I do not consider a poor school district, was getting 60% of that number. Now, while I don't consider them a poor school district, the state does because they're largely agricultural. So their value is based on CAUV. It's a reduced value. And anybody know a farmer has ever made a profit in their life? Won't use that one at Farm Bureau, believe me. We also have an increase in demand for services, and maybe not so much here. I mean, yeah, everybody always wants more, but think about all the people who say, well, you're taxing me out of Beavercreek, I'm going to go move to the country. Oh, but I still want that same EMS response in Jamestown is what I used to have in Beavercreek. That's going to increase the demand for services. And so, that costs money. Declining revenue sources. Historically, when you've been around as long as I have, the state has cut local government funding 50%. Personal property tax and created a commercial tax that was used to fund the state. When I argued with state legislators, that's a tax increase. They go, no, we're just eliminating this tax and creating this one. It's an offset. And it's like, yeah, but you're offsetting your revenue with my lost revenue. This is so, and then public utility deregulation. So the big issue here is that for the first 10 years, forcing us for those lost revenues. Those 10 years are up. That money is not coming back. And then homestead is just a complete fiasco right now. The state actually did try to do something that they took in the right direction. It's one of those one step forward, two steps back, but they finally tied that $25,000 exemption if you're receiving homestead to an inflationary factor. That increased that homestead amount 5%. That didn't keep up with the 30% property value increase, but they took a step in the right direction. So you're going to see a lot of things bolded in here. These are the county auditor's position. County Auditors Association of Ohio had a group that formed to make recommendations to state legislators on how to fix the property tax problem. There are other things in there that have been proposed by others. And so, first of all, we would say you need to increase both the dollar amount and income level associated with homestead. The number of people I talk to, and they say, well, how much can I earn and qualify? I said, well, it has to be $33,600 for loss. They said, I'm not impoverished. And so we think that's one of those things. The only thing the state, the House, the Senate, and the governor's office have all agreed to about is that we're not throwing money at the property tax problem. You guys got to find a solution. We're not going to fund it. This is one that the state really needs to dig deep and find a way to take care of our most vulnerable citizens. So some of the other solutions I've heard is prohibit future tax increases on individuals eligible for homestead. So whatever your taxes are now, continue to be until that property sells. I don't like that because as a senior, you get to vote on the levy, right? You don't have to pay it. I know we hate taxation without representation, but now we got representation without taxation. If you're going to vote, I think you have to have some skin in the game. That's the reason I like the next solution, not as well as what the Auditors Association is, but freeze property taxes, freeze property values for homestead recipients. So any increase in value would become exempt to you. That would mean if that new levy passed, you would still have to pay it, but you would pay it at a rate that isn't market. Yes, sir.
What happened when that house was sold? But it wouldn't go for a couple of years until you did a reappraisal, right?
No, because in this case, as soon as that property sold, that exemption would be removed. The same as it is for homestead now.
Right.
You're on homestead, you sell your property. Yeah, it does take a year because we use a tax lien date of January 1st of the year prior, but it would catch up eventually.
Eventually.
Well, again, it would be a 1-year delay.
Yeah.
Which is the way homestead works now. And then my favorite one, eliminating property taxes for seniors. Okay, now how are we going to define senior? Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people in favor of that, but I don't think that one's very viable. So obviously we mentioned the floor as a problem, and I'm doing okay on time. So the obvious answer is just eliminate the floor. Treat school districts just like you do every other entity. When they need more money, they have to go to the voters. I don't hate the idea, but I think our plan is better in that we would cap the increase that school districts can receive on their fixed rate levies that are subject to the floor. They would still get 100% growth on that inside millage, just as all the subdivisions who have inside millage do now. But we would cap it by an indexed amount. And I think that is a fair way to allow schools to continue to see growth. And we'll look at some numbers later that will show you kind of our plan in action. And then another proposal was to subject all school district property tax and income tax levies to the floor calculation. So you have to remember, when I talk about the floor, I'm only talking about current expense levies. I'm not talking about emergency levies, substitute levies, permanent improvement, classroom facilities, bond retirement. None of those levies are subject to that calculation. Restructuring property tax credits. Everybody who really pushed hard on something on this committee of county auditors got the plan named after them. This was the Graham plan. I've renamed it the Nolan plan because it's not very popular even among auditors. So we all know currently the non-business credit, owner occupancy credit gives you a 10%, 2.5% reduction for all levies passed prior to August 2013. So one of the proposals was, hey, fund all of the levies, not just those past August 3rd, 2013. This comes down to back to the argument that, well, the state says, we're not giving you more money to solve this problem. Again, we can keep saying, well, you need to do this. Well, they're going to keep saying no. So let's propose some good solutions. Yes, sir.
So if we solve the increasing property tax problem, and like you take a city like Beavercreek where 90% is funded by property tax, is that about right?
By,
How much?
by voted levies, yes.
By voted levy, about 90%. And so you reduce the amount of money coming in, then either we're gonna have to pass new levies to get back to the same level, or instead of 20 police, chief's only gonna have 10.
I disagree with that assessment because nowhere have I talked anything about how it affects municipalities, townships, county levies. School districts are the big winners. They are the ones that have, if we don't address it for school districts, there's no reason discussing it for anybody else. Now, we will talk about some of the proposals that impacts all subdivisions the same, including the proposed constitutional amendment.
Districts will be in the same boat. I mean, they can't pay their teachers less.
Well, wait till we look at some numbers. Okay, so under the Graham plan, as they like to call it, what we would do is we would eliminate the non-business credit altogether. And my argument for doing that is that we have properties that are used for commercial activities that are getting the non-business credit. They are primarily agricultural properties and residential rental properties. Why are they receiving a property tax credit? And instead, I would expand the owner occupancy credit so that it was a meaningful number. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't have access to everybody's data. I do have access to Greene County's data. If we eliminated the non-business credit and only gave the owner occupancy credit to those people who qualify for it currently, that dollar amount at the break-even point would be $900 per property. Currently, owner occupancy saves you about $50 to $60 a year. This would be a $900. Now, you're going to lose the owner occupancy, and the other benefit or detriment, depends on how you want to look at it, is that currently it's based on a percentage of your property tax. So if you live in a $2 million house, currently you're getting a 12.5% reduction on the taxes on a $2 million house. The person who lives in a $150,000 house is only getting a 12.5% reduction on the taxes on 150. So it's kind of a progressive plan that is part of the reason I think it's run into some problems. But again, we have to look at who are we trying to protect, the person that lives in a $150,000 home or a $2 million. That's something for legislators to discuss. Likely, it's going to be a blend of those two approaches that I would probably fully support, both the percentage and the fixed amount. But, when you're portraying something for the first time before a legislator, you want them to understand your concept so you don't muddy it with two different proposals. Greater control for auditors over property valuations. We're just going to kind of skip that one. It's kind of deep in the weeds, probably more something I need to have a discussion with Brian Lampton about. It is funny though, when 187 passed, that was the only thing that was included in both the House and Senate version of 187 was giving auditors more control over property values. So we're confident we're going to get it done. Targeted tax relief is directed more at large cities. And so we're not going to talk a lot about it, but I want to give you an example. Downtown Columbus, anybody been to Short North? I love the Short North, lots of restaurants, bars, boutiques. It's a neat place to visit. It used to be a hellhole. City gave a bunch of exemptions to developers to rebuild that area. Now that lady who's lived in that house for 60 years can't afford her house because her house that was worth $60,000 at best is now worth $500,000 because somebody wants to demo it so you put up another boutique. How do you keep that person in their property? That's a big city issue. I'll be quite honest. I'm not going to pretend to fully understand it, but we do have 4 ways of addressing it. Some other proposals, constitutional amendment limiting the annual tax increase to 4% on each property. I'm really scared of this one because it's simple. It's easy. Everybody can grasp the concept. There is no, 20 mil floor, no discussions of anything complicated. But what's the problem? The village of Yellow Springs or Yellow Springs School District just passed a 10% increase at the ballot. This would cap that increase at 4%, which means all the other subdivisions lose 6%. That's probably not really what we intended. In addition, this is an annual thing. So if your taxes were supposed to have gone up 12% because of the revow, in year one, they would go up 4%. Year two, they go up 4%. Year three, they go up 4%. And now you've made back whole. Well, wait a minute. Now it's time for the auditor to do another valuation update. So while it's, you could argue it saved you money in the long run, it just made the pill easier to swallow. It didn't solve the problem. And we need to solve the problem. Altering how auditors appraise properties. So currently we use sales that occurred in the year closest to our tax lien date. So our tax lien date for the last valuation update was January 1st of 23, which means we looked at 2022 sales. Now, if there aren't enough sales, we will go back additional years to see what the market is. Bowersville, we have Clifton, we have to do that frequently. There's just not enough sales in those small areas. But the problem with averaging sales over that 3-year period is if you look right now, our market is still going up. So I ran a sales ratio report. In Beavercreek City, we are currently at 86%. Now remember, as of January 1st, 23, I had us at 95%. We're now at 86%. Is it growing like it was? No, thank you. But it's still growing. This isn't a problem that's going to go away on its own. So again, I just don't think the averaging is a good solution. The other problem with averaging, let's say in 2025, the market crashes. I'm still going to raise your value because I got to average those 3 years. It's not necessarily a good way to do it. One of the suggestions, update property values annually. Again, that's fine. We can update them annually, but again, all we did was make the pill easier to swallow. We gave you a smaller increase over a 3-year period. You ended up paying more because you're paying it each year over that 3-year period. Don't like that suggestion either. My favorite, the reason this is my favorite was because it's from somebody I really respect. He's really smart. It's an anomaly. It'll go away. It hasn't happened in the past 30 years. What makes you think it's going to happen in the next 30? Well, I would just soon have a plan in place than to just hope. So, real quick, we're going to look at my mother's property. In 2022, her taxes were $1,200. Under current law, her new tax bill was $1,600. Now, I did increase my mother's property value 41%. You guess who didn't get invited to Christmas? And look, her homestead actually lost value. In 2022, she received $428 to homestead. This year, she gets $389 because the value increase didn't keep up with that 5% bump in the homestead amount. So if you look at just doing the cap, saying, okay, we're just going to cap the amount of revenue school districts can receive on these current expense levies, her tax bill would have gone up 10%. If you did the cap and the owner occupancy credit change, you can see her tax bill would have actually decreased 38%. Now, I use my mother as an example because A, she's on homestead, it shows a lot. And then her value, she's not in a luxurious house. She's in a 3-bedroom brick ranch that I grew up in when I was a kid. So these are the properties that are seeing the largest increase because they are the affordable housing. There is no affordable housing if you're not paying $150 or more for that 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. So let's look at what happens to the schools. Here, and these are, both of these examples are Xenia City School examples. So I apologize for not doing Beavercreek, but there's a lot of math that goes in behind this. So we can see that in all cases, they have 20 bills. You can see their value went from 653 million up to 887 million. And you can see that under current law, their revenue from their fixed or their current expense levies includes inside and their fixed rate current expense levies grew 36%. It does not include their emergency bond or any of those types of permanent improvement levies. This is just their current expense. If you cap it, they would have seen a 14% increase in their tax revenue. That is all I got, and I would welcome any questions. And like that, I didn't do 10 minutes, but I got 5. And I'm happy to stick around afterward if anybody wants to.
That's a question here.
Yes, sir.
With those, 390 school districts, or 309 was it, that are at the floor? If those school district voters had passed more current expense levies, would they not be at that 20 mil floor?
That is correct. So that's what Bellbrook Sugar Creek School District is, our only school district that is not at the floor in Greene County. And they have always either replaced existing levies or added additional levies as current expense. So they've never worked their way down to the floor. After failing levies 3 consecutive elections, you know what they did? They put an emergency levy on and got it passed. So while they're not at the floor, and they still got a ways to go before they get to the floor, that emergency levy is going to work them towards that floor. Anything else? How boring was it? So I'm going to tell you, you guys are the first group I've done this for. I've done it for county auditors. And I looked across the room and some of them were nodding off. So, I mean, I really want, is this something, if you have ways that I can simplify it, you guys don't have a copy of the presentation. I didn't. Everybody's got my website.
Zoom now.
It's on Zoom.
Well, we'll be on Zoom. I'm not on Zoom, it'll be YouTube tomorrow.
So by all means, reach out, give me some feedback. I know, yes, sir.
So this all goes back to the 70s, whatever that mid-70s law that
House Bill 91.
yeah, right? And that's what's caused this whole issue. Is that basically?
Well, sort of, other than House Bill 920 was the solution to a problem, because prior to House Bill 920, you had to come to the Budget Commission with your budget. And if there were valuation increases, we were still increasing values. But if there were valuation increases and your budget didn't show a need for your levies, what would the Budget Commission do? We would cut your levies to where you got what you needed. Government officials can be a little slick sometimes. So what do? Well, let's bump up our budget. Budget Commission has no statutory authority to call BS on my budget. All they have the right to do is say, you don't show a need. If you show a need, I can't take it from you. So we had a little bit of that gamesmanship, which is what caused House Bill 9.
And the net result is that most property taxes are indexed against inflation. Is that correct?
No,
because they're flat.
They are not indexed against inflation. They don't recognize inflation,
Right.
Except for the inside millage.
Right.
But talking
But
about
they're flat. So if the cost of living goes up 5% a year, you lose 5% a year effectively of buying.
Correct. Yeah, I would agree. And, not speaking to the Beavercreek income tax issue, because I live in Xenia and I don't care, and I'll probably lose votes anyways for saying this, but ultimately, I think the best tax plan is a mixture of the taxes that you have available. Property taxes, as hated as they are, as unfair as they are, why do we still have them?
Ease of administration.
I disagree, because it's not easy. I do this job. Because it's a stable source of income.
Right.
When the economy tanks, property values don't necessarily tank. You look at what the city of Xenia, city of Fairborn were going through during the recession, and they were struggling because their income was way down because they relied heavily on income tax. Beavercreek City came out fairly unscathed because you have that nice level property tax that if values go down, the rate goes up. Boom, I'm still right here. So. Yes, sir.
Superb explanation. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much, David. This is our have it, we give a book to the library. David's already signed this. It's called Up in the, no, you can sit down. It's called Up in the Leaves. It's about tree houses, and I hesitated about giving it to him because he may start telling tax.
Done before.
But I can't get rid of my sergeant at arms thing real quick. So there's a couple things that I came up with. Why did the auditor cross the road? To count the chickens on the other side. And what is an auditor? Someone who arrives at the battle and bayonets all the wounded. All right. But you know, had to keep up with things. So next week's meeting, our greeters are Pete Bales and Pete Lampton. Next week's speaker is Ken Nichols, the Dayton Dragons. And then please keep your eye out for upcoming programs on Beavercreekrotary.com and our Facebook page. Anything else for the good of the club? It all rise for the national anthem? Okay. Get on a flag. Can you guys sit somewhere? Do your job. What's the guy? One is fire. Everything is up to the crawl. Thank you all. This last one. And the answer, yeah. Feature, later, and if the yeah.
Yeah, they got like hand on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get shit out like the correct list of there. Sorry, you got me. I'm sure wrong. Tax that. So better.
Right. That'll be coming down the road.
Right. Yeah, so. Awesome. That kind of set amount will. Yeah, it's like.